Hi guys, welcome back to the Shannon Show. So today's video is going to be a review of Honey Boy. For those of you who haven't, please subscribe to my channel and thank you to everyone who has. So let's get into the review. Honey Boy, I think most people probably know, and probably the reason why most people are going to go watch it, is that this is basically a semi-autobiography of Shia LaBeouf's story, and he actually wrote the screenplay as well. So yeah, it basically just kind of follows his life. So we kind of see, so the story begins, he's kind of like a young adult, late teenage years, early 20s, and he's on set and he's drinking excessively. He ends up kind of getting a drink driving charge, and he, instead of going into prison, he has to go to a rehab facility, and obviously I'm guessing he has money to go to a good one. So it's kind of like the typical rehab facility. You've got you've got the hug yourself routine, you've got the rubber bands, screaming in the woods, just kind of what you would kind of think an LA rehab place would be. And in the rehab place, it basically says that they think that he has PTSD, which he's actually been diagnosed with. It says he's got PTSD, probably from his childhood. And then the film kind of flashbacks from, him as the young adult, which is set sort of in the present day, but past him, and him as a young boy living on set with his father. And most of the plot kind of centers around his relationship with his father, and he actually plays his own father. In terms of the story, I feel like the story was really good. Obviously, this is like his first feature film screenplay. He's written or co-wrote short films before, but this is him actually getting into like the feature thing. And I feel like it was a pretty decent first screenplay. It wasn't like the best screenplay ever. There was some things that could have been improved, but I feel like where the screenplay was at its strongest is when it was kind of centering around the relationship of him as a young boy living on set and his relationship with his father. That's where I feel like the story was its strongest. It was really interesting, really telling. Obviously, from the outside looking in, it didn't seem like him and his father had the best loving relationship. His father had issues with alcohol and drugs. Well, that's what the film is saying. I don't know if it's, as true to real life. But in the film, his father is portrayed as kind of abusive. He is trying to recover. The only person really looking out for him is his son. But then there's the dynamic of I'm your father. So his father supports him in his acting career and believes in him as an actor. But then there's also the element of power and control and elements of jealousy, because it seems like, his father wanted to be an actor and perhaps he's trying to live through his son, and there's some resentment there. So the kind of plot and the direction kind of toys with that a lot, which I thought was quite interesting. And I feel like both the actors did a good job. I feel like in terms of the acting, obviously, Shia did an excellent job as his father, but I feel like the standout performance was actually Noah Jupe, who plays young Shia, who's called Otis in the film. I feel like he was the standout performance. Shia was really strong. They both worked really well together, but in terms of performance, I feel like Noah Jupe actually stole the show. Lucas Hedge, who's another kind of upcoming actor, he plays kind of the young Otis, the young adult Shia LaBeouf. His acting is solid, but I feel like if we're comparing him to Shia LaBeouf's performance and Noah Jupe's performance, he kind of doesn't stand out. It's almost like he's overshadowed by that, and I feel like perhaps maybe. No, I think that it's the director's fault. I feel like if you look at Noah Jupe's performance and Shia LaBeouf's performance and then compare it to Lucas Hedges' performance, it's kind of like almost as if he didn't get as much direction as them. because obviously he plays the kind of aggressive, angry Sheila Booth who's trying to recover from, his trauma, his childhood trauma, and his drinking, and it kind of felt like a one note because I feel like found that like a one note character, and which is quite ironic because often that is what happens with Sheila Booth. He's often a one note character. He's the delinquent, and he has a nice side, but he's also quite aggressive. And it's almost like that's what happened with Lucas Hedge, because I feel like it's as in terms of acting, it's easy to play the angry teenager. It's easy to play that, but it wasn't as nuanced as Noah Jupe or Sheila Booth's portrayals of their characters. And I feel like maybe there was some neglect there. But then I also, what my theory is, conspiracy theory here, is that even though Sheila Booth only has the screenplay credit, I think he had some input, whether it was direct or indirect input in the directing of him and Noah Jupe, because obviously they were doing the scenes together. And I feel like maybe it was a thing where anyone who's directed somebody with an actor that likes to self-direct themselves will know, but those ones where, the actor is just directing themselves, so giving them directions, and they're like, oh, why don't I do it like this? Oh, I think we should do it this way. And then obviously he's the one who's pulling in, he's basically the name on the tin. It's his story. People are going to come to see it because Sheila Buff's story, and he wrote the story as well, and then he's acting in it. So I feel like perhaps the director probably did have an input, but I feel like Sheila Booth had an input in the direction of the scene as well, especially the scenes that he was in. And I feel like that's why perhaps you can see the difference in direction, because Sheila Booth actually had more of an impact, more of an input in the direction of his particular scenes, and the portrayal of him as a young boy, obviously, maybe perhaps they meant more to him, so he wanted to be more involved, and that's why there is a clear difference in direction. That is my theory, but then obviously he didn't put his name on the directing credit. I think that's what happened. But let me know if anyone's watched that. Are you kind of getting what I'm saying? And do you agree with me or not? Let me know. But that's what I kind of think happened. I think Sheila Booth definitely had some input in the direction, especially for his own performance and the performances that he had with Noah Jupe. But it would have been nice to see a more kind of nuanced performance from Lucas Hedge, as we saw with Noah Jupe and Sheila Booth. But overall, really strong stellar performances from Sheila Booth and Noah Jupe. FK Twigs, she's got an acting credit in there. She had quite a minute role, but I do believe at the time of shooting, him and Shia were more than friendly with each other, so maybe that's why she got the official credit. But obviously, FK Twigs is a singer, and she did quite a good job. I feel like she played the kind of nice, her persona as an artist is kind of that nice kind of weird alternative vibe, and she kind of exuded that within the film. I liked her character, but then also with her character as well, obviously in terms of the story of the film, there was like kind of elements of kind of pedophilia. There wasn't any like pedophilic acts per se, but there was kind of this, as a young boy, he had this kind of relationship / friendship with this older woman, like significantly older woman. He was 12, we're guessing this woman is at least 20. So they have a kind of really close, intimate friendship, but like not intimate as in, sex, but like intimate as in close. So, it kind of felt a bit pedophilic. It felt like their scenes together when they were like hugging each other, like kissing each other on the cheek. It felt a bit pedophilic. It made me feel uncomfortable. For those of you who have watched it, you know kind of what kind of particular scenes I'm talking about. Do you feel like this was just an innocent friendship between a child and an adult, or was it kind of paedophilia? Um, I'm not mad at it. Like, I don't think that should be taken out, but it made me feel uncomfortable. I don't know if that was the objective of the director and Sheila Booth, if that was meant to make you feel uncomfortable. But it was like uncomfortable because, you know, in a sense, you know, it felt like a sweet relationship, but then the ages, it just seems wrong. Oh, yeah. But at the same time, that was also interesting. Another key thing in the film was the cinematography. Like, the film was really beautiful. Um, they both obviously. Like I said, I don't think Sheila Booth was literally just the writer and that was all he did. I think he dipped and dabbled into all the departments. But yeah, the cinematography is really, really good. Like, you can tell they wanted it to look a certain way. The particular aesthetic. There's a lot of like kind of like soft pinky purple lights in it, which I think work well and kind of like reminds me of LA, or like how I think LA in the early 90s would have looked like. What else? One thing that I also noticed, and why I feel like Sheila Booth definitely had some input, is that I kind of got an Andrea Arnold feel from the cinematography. Like, a lot of the time things link together, and obviously he was just her film, and like one of like, you know, Andrea Arnold's like iconographies are kind of like linking in cinematography from different scenes. So like, for instance, linking in cinematography and linking in the story together through the cinematography, like having them meet at specific things. So if he was to say, I had a specific memory of me on the toilet, it would link it in with him as an adult on the toilet. Yeah, that's kind of like an example, but I thought that was really great. Did any of you kind of spot the kind of Andrea Arnold influences in the cinematography? I caught that. I caught it, and yeah, I think it worked really well. So I feel like it's really clear that Shia LaBeouf is like, he's not just kind of like a one-trick pony. I feel like it's clear that he's studied cinematography, he's studied writing, and he wants to take his filmmaking craft very seriously. Very seriously, and yeah, I'm here for it. I'm here for Shia LaBeouf as a filmmaker, and I think he has a very promising career, and I definitely think perhaps potential, maybe even an Oscar down the road. I'm not sure if this film would qualify for an Oscar, but maybe the acting, actually. I think maybe Shia LaBeouf, definitely Noah Jupe. I think his performance is worthy of an Oscar nomination. And maybe the cinematography, actually, because the cinematography was actually quite good. Oh, this light, it doesn't want to let me live. And I think the cinematography could probably be nominated for an Oscar as well. There's some really cool shots, especially with like the flower growing. That was quite cool. I really like the shot in the swimming pool. In terms of the score, nothing really stood out to me for the score, to be honest, or the sound, to be honest. So I'd just say it was quite solid. I wouldn't point out anything wrong with it. And yeah, obviously, I think I think he should go into directing. I think it's clear that he definitely directed himself. Or I think it's definitely clear that he had some input in the direction for himself and the character who plays him as a little boy, Otis, with Noah Jupe. He did collaborate with Alma Harrell. She's the actual director for it, credited director. I think that's how you say her last name, Harrell, correct me if I'm wrong. So I think they'll probably definitely continue to work with each other until he wants to kind of put himself as a director. But I feel like he should just direct, like, officially. I think maybe it's easier for him to self-direct as an actor rather than be in front of the camera telling people what to do. And also, I feel like this story was kind of like a message to everybody and the media because obviously, throughout the media he hasn't been portrayed, particularly in a positive light most of the time. He's often, that meme of him saying, just do it and stuff like that. Particularly when he was starting to get in trouble with the drinking. I'm not sure if it was drugs as well. I think maybe it was drugs as well as the drinking. In the film it's just a drinking issue. But obviously, because he just came off the Transformers, and he was Disney Channel. He was on Disney Channel, and he was seen as the golden boy. He was just a typical child star that went off the rails, and that label kind of just stuck on him. Like at the film festival, I did get like red carpet coverage, so I went to one of his red carpets, which was the Peanut Butter Falcon, which I think I'm going to do a review for, so look out for that. And he wasn't taking any questions from the press. He was only doing pictures, no interviews. So he does do interviews, but I think he like preps and vets the people who are interviewing him. So he's obviously doesn't like the way that he's been portrayed by some by the media and by certain journalists, because a lot of journalists they're out to make a name for themselves, and they strive off controversy because that's what gets the clicks, and they're trying to pay. That's what gets the clicks, and they're trying to make as much money as they can. But I feel like this is him trying to tell us his story. Like, he's not just this privileged pop star who, just turned to drugs and is now, off the rails. I feel like he was trying to justify why he had this spell with drugs and alcohol, why he had been in rehab, why he is, aggressive and angry. It's because of his childhood. Like, he didn't have the best childhood, and his father was abusive, and I feel like that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to not justify, but basically he's trying to tell his story and say, I'm a human being, and this is why I'm the way that I am. I feel like that's what he was trying to say with this film. I was going to say something else. I need to remember now. And then in terms of his father, obviously, how I came out in terms of his father, their relationship is also quite nuanced because, even though his father is kind of abusive, it's almost like he kind of forgives him every single time. And then there's a spell where he just stops speaking to him, but then, at the end, he forgives him. And there's kind of like an element of forgiveness. And, I feel like it's quite nuanced, especially with relationships. Like, not everyone has the best relationship with their parents, not necessarily because of physical abuse. Some people it's kind of just like verbal, or they just disagree, or their parents are just really negative. But I feel like most of us, even though we might not even like our parents as people, we tend to forgive them for the ways that they have wronged us. So I feel like that was quite interesting. I'm not really sure if I'd say it was heavy. It is a bit heavy. I'm not really sure. Maybe I'm desensitized. But it is a bit heavy. I think you might be able to relate to it if you don't necessarily have a good relationship with your parents, or the best relationship with your parents. I think it is a bit relatable. In terms of heaviness, it can be a bit heavy at times. Like, there's loads of times where just you just want to go through the screen and hug him. But yeah, I'd say it depends. If you don't like watching traumatic things, then I wouldn't recommend it to you. If you don't mind, if you think if it's a worthwhile traumatic story, I think this is definitely one of those ones where, yes, it's got elements of trauma in it, but I feel like it's worthwhile watching. It's worthwhile reliving that person's trauma. I feel like it's one of those stories where it's worth watching it. So yeah, overall, I'm going to give it a strong 3.5. I've been dishing out the 3.5s lately. yeah, it was a really good film. I almost at a 4. I think what could have saved it is if there was a bit more kind of nuanced direction for him as a young adult, the person who played Lucas Hedge, him, and maybe some bits of the story could have been strengthened. I feel like there was a lot of focus on the father and the son, and some of the other bits of the screenplay were a bit neglected. So I feel like that's what's kind of hampered it from being a 4 out of 5. But overall, a really good debut, feature debut from Shia LaBeouf, and I'd recommend you see it, and definitely go see it in the cinema, and when it comes out on Amazon, both if you can. But yeah, and don't forget to subscribe and let me know what your thoughts are on the film. If you haven't watched it after watching this review, do you think you're going to go watch it? And yeah, till next time guys, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't yet. Bye!